Around Madrid, defense was common, but the other major battle of January and February of 1937 was different. Malaga was an isolated strip of Republican territory along the coastline. In January of 1937, nationalist units approached from the west and northeast. Colonel Villalba, the Republican in charge of defense, couldn't do much. He lacked adequate arms, and refugees were streaming out of the city. As they fled, they were targeted by nationalist bombardment. 3,000 to 5,000 were killed. On February 7th, the Italian and Spanish troops marched into Malaga and claimed the first Italian victory of the war, one that would be celebrated back home by Mussolini. Quickly, retribution attacks occurred, with Republicans in the city seized and executed. This alarmed the Italians, who were finding that this was a war where cruelty was as common as heroism. Another major battle of early 1937 was the Battle of Guadalajara in March of 1937. Guadalajara lies to the northeast of Madrid, and this was in another attempt by nationalists to take Madrid, the goal being to cut it off from supplies and lay siege to the city. 50,000 nationalists attacked, with many Italian soldiers helping, as many as 35,000 Italian soldiers. Many of the Italians had been equipped to fight in Ethiopia, believing that this was where they were going to be sent. To make problems worse, snow and sleet hit during the battle, and the equipment became stuck in the mud. The Russian-made tanks of the Republicans quickly routed them. Sometimes called fascism's first defeat, the Italians fled and left much of their equipment for the Republicans to take and use. This battle was also the smoking gun that the international press needed, that Italian soldiers were indeed fighting in Spain, despite Italy denying as much previously. Italy then publicly proclaimed that they were not going to leave Spain until there was a victory, and the Republicans began to paint the nationalists as helping an Italian invasion of Spain, as you can see in these propaganda posters. Franco was somewhat happy with this defeat, as it helped him to have an upper hand over Mussolini, whom he disagreed with on tactics and strategies of the war. Franco felt that the systematic occupation of a place was preferable to a quick victory which left enemies in place. Franco's soldiers also began mocking the Italians with lyrical changes to tunes. The following chorus, originating with General Moscardo's Navarrese, humorously took the Italians to task for their earlier complaints about the lack of motorized transport in nationalist ranks. It said, "Guadalajara is not Abyssinia. Spaniards, even if red, are brave. You need fewer trucks and more balls." Citizens on both sides took the war as an opportunity to settle old scores. Often those on the left targeted the clergy and members of the Falange, while the right targeted communist and anarchist as well as those in unions. Figures for what would be called the Red Terror, that is, terror perpetrated by the Republicans towards nationalists and others, ranged from 38,000 to 110,000. Barcelona was the scene of the fiercest anti-clericalism of the war, with almost every religious building burned by anarchist and communist and 700 clergy murdered. Priest ears were cut off and passed around. Nuns were exhumed and displayed publicly in a variety of poses. The most infamous incident was during the defense of the city of Madrid in 1936, where thousands of nationalist detainees were taken out by bus and shot outside the city, and that was mentioned in an earlier video. Estimates of executions in what would be called the White Terror, that is, terror perpetrated by nationalists in the areas they occupied towards communist, anarchist, and others, range from fewer than 50,000 to 200,000. This is during the war, of course. When Franco won the war and took over afterwards, there were more. After taking over an area, it wasn't uncommon for nationalists to hunt down those that sympathized with the Republicans and kill them. The poet Garcia Lorca was killed partially due to the fact that he was gay. One executioner actually said, "I fired 2 bullets into his arse for being a queer." Republicans were picked out in Badajoz by rifle butt bruises on their shoulders. They were then herded into a bull ring, all 1,500 of them, and shot. The most famous atrocity of the war, however, happened during the Vizcaya campaign in March of 1937. In the spring of 1937, the nationalist focus became the Basque province of Vizcaya. The Basque was one of the most Catholic areas of Spain and was fiercely independent, desiring its own state. This commitment to independence had led them to side with the Republicans, who they saw as being more likely to allow them independence due to their decentralization stance. This amazed other Catholics throughout Spain who felt that all Catholics should be fighting against the Republicans. Further, the capital of Vizcaya was highly desirable because Bilbao, which is the capital, had plenty of iron mines, steelworks, and shipbuilding. On March 31st, General Mola began the campaign for Vizcaya by bombing and machine gunning Durango with the Condor Legion. With little air force that could stand up to the Nazi Condor Legion, the Nationalists bombed and strafed with ease. 250 civilians were killed at Durango. However, the event that would become notorious and really emblematic of the entire war for demonstrating Nazi and fascist cruelty was the next target in the Vizcaya campaign, the city of Guernica. On April 25, 1937, a meeting was held in Burgos where the Nationals discussed the best method to take the Basque region. The spiritual capital of the Basque was Guernica, which isn't on this map, but it's located to the east of Bilbao. Guernica was a small town that held many important landmarks for the Basque people. Richthofen, the commander of the Condor Legion, decided at the meeting that the best approach would be to carpet bomb the city. On April 26, the Condor Legion carpet-bombed Guernica in the Basque, as ordered by Richthofen and supported by Franco. The bombs used were shrapnel and incendiary, and this was the first time a city in Europe was carpet-bombed to this degree. The city had no air defenses and was crowded with wooden buildings. Further, April 26th was a market day, and thus citizens were out in huge numbers. The city was larger than its usual population of 5,000. As they fled, they were machine gunned by planes from only 200 feet above. They bombed every 15 minutes for 3 hours, destroying 3/4 of the city buildings, including the churches. The city burned for much longer than the 3 hours of bombing. The international community was outraged at this massacre and turned against Franco, especially with Britain and the U.S. However, the governments of Britain and the U.S. tried to downplay this so as not to upset their non-interventionist stance. Debate still rages as to why Guernica was bombed. Those on the left argue that it was a deliberate terrorist action to put down resistance. Those on the right say that the press put out press saying that the town was destroyed by retreating Republicans and Asturian miners in a scorched earth technique. The truth is probably somewhere in between. While the bombing was ordered, machine gunning may have not been ordered, and the decision was made by the pilots themselves. And the bombing of Guernica, of course, was immortalized by Pablo Picasso in his painting in June of 1937. Debate still rages about the numbers killed in Guernica, somewhere between 300 and 1,700 civilians. The Guernica aerial attack was a test run for the Nazi tactic of blitzkrieg, and its success helped assure Hitler that this was the way to fight in a coming war. The images of the Condor Legion attacking unfettered, along with images of Ethiopia being bombed by Italy, tricked Hitler into believing that all air wars would be this easy in the future.